That power that created and sustains all things is not outside of you, it is within you. It is your consciousness, your awareness of being. The universe cannot say no to you because the universe is not separate from you. You are the universe expressing itself as a human being, having a temporary human experience. Tonight I want to share with you the secret of effective prayer. Prayer is not begging or beseeching an external deity. Prayer is the art of assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. When you know how to ask properly, there is no power that can say no to your request. Let me share with you a passage from Scripture that reveals this truth. In the book of Mark 1:1-4, we read, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." The secret lies in these words. Believe that you have received it. You must first assume the feeling of already having what you desire before it can manifest in your world. Most people are constantly asking from a state of lack and wondering why their prayers go unanswered. They pray and affirm but remain in the same state of consciousness that does not have what they are seeking. This is the fundamental error. To ask in such a way that the universe cannot say no. You must ask from the state of fulfillment, not from the state of desire. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret and the art of successful prayer. Let me illustrate this principle with a simple example. If you desire financial abundance, do not pray by saying, "God, please give me more money," or "Universe, I need financial freedom." This is asking from lack, and your very prayer is a confession of your current state of poverty. Instead, you must assume the feeling of already being financially abundant. How would you feel if you were already financially free? What thoughts would occupy your mind? How would you carry yourself? What conversations would you have when you assume the feeling of financial abundance? When you sleep in the assumption that you are now financially free, you are asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. For the universe can only reflect back to you your own conception of yourself. Remember the words of the prophet Isaiah, "Before they call, I will answer." This is a profound psychological and spiritual truth. Before you call, before you ask, the answer is already prepared. Your assumption, your state of consciousness, determines what you will call for and consequently what will be answered. I recall a gentleman who attended one of my lectures in New York. He approached me afterward and said, "Mr. Godard, I have been praying for a promotion in my company for 3 years with no results." I asked him, "How do you pray?" He described a process of visualization where he would see himself being congratulated, receiving a new title and a higher salary. But I asked, "What is the feeling you embody after this visualization?" He confessed that he returned to feeling frustrated that it hadn't happened yet. I told him, "You are undoing your prayer with your subsequent feeling state. You must not only visualize the end result, but also sleep in the conviction that it is done." I suggested that he assume the feeling of already having received the promotion before going to sleep each night. Within 2 weeks, he received not just a promotion, but a position 2 levels higher than he had initially sought. This is the law, and it never fails. But you must understand that your conscious assumption, though false to your senses if persisted in, will harden into fact. The time it takes for your assumption to become fact depends on the naturalness of the feeling. How deeply you are embracing the new state. Now there is another aspect to asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no, and that is detachment. Many of you have heard of the importance of detachment in manifestation, but detachment is often misunderstood. Detachment does not mean not caring about your desire. It means complete faith that it is already yours in the spiritual realm and must by law materialize in the physical realm. True detachment comes from the conviction that what you have assumed in consciousness is already a fact in the spiritual realm, which is the realm of causation. The physical realm is merely the realm of effects. Cause always precedes effect. Your consciousness is the cause. Your world is the effect. Let me share with you another example to illustrate this principle. A young woman came to me in despair over her marriage. Her husband had left her for another woman, and all logical evidence suggested that the marriage was over. I asked her if she truly wanted her husband back, and she confirmed with tears in her eyes that she did. I told her, "Your task is simple but not easy. You must assume that your husband has returned and that your marriage is more harmonious than ever before. You must live from the end. When you go to sleep at night, feel the joy and gratitude of having your husband back. Feel his presence beside you in bed. Hear his voice expressing his love for you. Feel the wedding ring on your finger. Do this with conviction, and the universe cannot say no." She practiced this faithfully for 3 weeks. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, unexpectedly, her husband called. They met for coffee, which led to dinner, and within a month he had moved back home. But here's the interesting part. He told her that during those 3 weeks he couldn't stop thinking about her. He felt inexplicably drawn back to her despite his logical mind telling him to stay away. This is how the law works. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are exercising the divine power within you, which is your imagination, and your imagination, sustained with conviction, will externalize itself in your physical reality. I want to emphasize that this is not mere positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is the application of an immutable spiritual law. The Bible calls it faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the feeling of possession of the things desired. Faith is coming from a state of knowing, not hoping or wishing. Now let us delve deeper into the mechanics of this process. How exactly do you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled? It begins with a decision. You must decide what you want to be, to have, or to experience. Be specific. Be clear. Then you must construct a scene in your imagination that implies the fulfillment of your desire. For instance, if you desire a new home, create a scene where a friend is congratulating you on your beautiful new home. Feel their handshake or embrace. Hear their voice. Smell the freshness of your new space. Feel the emotion of pride and gratitude for having your new home. This scene, if constructed with sensory vividness and emotional intensity, and if persisted in until it takes on the tone of reality, will materialize in your physical world. This is asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no, because you are not asking in the traditional sense at all. You are claiming, you are appropriating, you are assuming, you are exercising your divine right as a creator made in the image of God. I must stress that this principle applies to every area of your life: health, wealth, relationships, career, spiritual growth, and more. There is no limit to what you can achieve through the proper application of your imagination. Consider the case of physical healing. If you are experiencing illness or physical discomfort, the conventional approach is to focus on the problem, to fight against it, to see it as an enemy to be conquered. But this keeps you locked in the consciousness of illness. Instead, assume the feeling of being perfectly healthy. Feel the energy coursing through your body. Feel the joy of pain-free movement. Feel the gratitude for your robust health. This feeling state persisted in will manifest as physical well-being. I recall a woman who had been diagnosed with a chronic condition that doctors said was incurable. She came to me in desperation, having exhausted all medical options. I taught her this principle of assuming the feeling of her wish fulfilled. I instructed her to go to sleep each night in the assumption of perfect health, to feel the joy and gratitude of being completely healed. Within 3 months, she returned to her doctor for a checkup, and to the doctor's astonishment, there was no trace of the condition. The doctor called it a spontaneous remission, a medical miracle. But it was no miracle in the sense of a violation of natural law. It was the perfect operation of the law of assumption. She had changed her concept of herself, and her body reflected that new concept. Now, some of you may be thinking, but Wayne, what about the time gap? What about the waiting period between my assumption and its manifestation in the physical world? This is where most people falter. They cannot sustain the faith through the interval of time. They begin to doubt, to question, to look for results, and in doing so, they revert to the old state of consciousness, the state of lack. The key is to understand that time is merely a psychological construct, a measurement of the interval between events. In the realm of spirit, in the realm of consciousness, there is no time. Your desire is already fulfilled the moment you assume the feeling of its fulfillment. The time it takes to materialize in the physical realm is determined by various factors, including the naturalness of the state to you and the degree to which you persist in the new state. Do not be concerned with the how. The universe, God, your own wonderful human imagination will take care of the how. Your job is to remain faithful to the end, to the state of fulfillment. As you do this, the bridge of incidents will form naturally to lead you to the physical realization of your desire. Let me give you another example to illustrate this point. A man desired to travel to a foreign country but lacked the financial means to do so. Instead of focusing on the lack of money, he began to assume the feeling of already being in that country. Each night before sleep, he would imagine smelling the distinct aromas of that country's cuisine, hearing the local language being spoken, seeing the famous landmarks, and feeling the unique texture of the local fabrics. He persisted in this assumption for several weeks. Then, out of the blue, he received a call from a company that was expanding into that very country. They had seen his resume online and wanted to interview him for a position that would require him to relocate there. Not only would they cover his travel expenses, but they would also provide a salary that far exceeded what he was currently earning. Was this a coincidence? There are no coincidences in a universe governed by law. It was the perfect externalization of his internal state. He had asked in such a way that the universe could not say no. I must also address a question that often arises. What about the desires of others? What if my desire conflicts with someone else's? This stems from a misunderstanding of the nature of consciousness. Consciousness is one, although it appears to be many. There is only one God, one imagination expressing itself through countless human forms. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are not imposing your will on another. You are simply attracting to yourself to circumstances, people, and events that match your state of consciousness. Everyone is you pushed out. The world is yourself pushed out. What you see in others is a reflection of your own consciousness. If you want to change your world, change your concept of yourself. As within, so without. This is the ancient Hermetic principle, and it is as true today as it was thousands of years ago. Now I want to share with you a technique that I have found particularly effective in assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is the technique of revision. Revision is the art of mentally rewriting a past event to align with your desired outcome. By revising the past, you are actually recreating your future, because the future is a projection of your past beliefs and assumptions. For example, if you had a disagreement with a colleague at work, instead of carrying the negative energy of that encounter, revise it in your imagination. See the conversation going harmoniously. Feel the mutual respect and understanding. Hear the words of agreement and cooperation. By revising the past event, you are changing your state of consciousness and consequently your future interactions with that person. Revision can be applied to any past event that continues to affect your present state of consciousness negative. By mentally rewriting these events, you are asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. Another powerful technique is the use of affirmative prayer, or what I call imaginative assertion. Unlike traditional prayer, which often takes the form of petition or supplication, affirmative prayer is the declaration of what is already true in spirit. It is claiming what is already yours by divine right. For instance, instead of saying, "God, please heal my body," say with conviction, "I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy." Feel the truth of these words. Embody them. Let them permeate your consciousness until they become your dominant state. This is asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no, because you are not asking from a place of lack or need. You are affirming the truth of your being, the truth of who you really are. I want to emphasize that the techniques that visualization, revision, affirmative prayer, or any other are merely aids to help you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The techniques themselves are not the power. The power is in your consciousness, in your ability to assume and persist in a state. Let me share with you a personal experience that illustrates this principle. Many years ago, I desired to travel to Barbados to visit my family, but I lacked the funds to make the journey. Instead of dwelling on my lack of resources, I began to assume the feeling of already being in Barbados. Each night before sleep, I would imagine lying in my familiar bed in my family home in Barbados. I would hear the distinct sound of the palm trees rustling in the Caribbean breeze. I would smell the salt air and feel the warmth of the tropical climate. I persisted in this assumption for several weeks, falling asleep each night in the feeling of already being in Barbados. Then one day I received a letter from my brother in Barbados. Inside the letter was a ticket for passage to Barbados, a gift from my family. The law had worked perfectly. My internal assumption had externalized itself. This is the law, and it never fails. But you must apply it correctly. You must ask from the state of having, not from the state of wanting. You must embody the consciousness of already being what you want to be, already having what you want to have, already experiencing what you want to experience. Now, I want to address a common misconception. Many people believe that they must get rid of all negative thoughts to manifest their desires. This is not true. Thoughts and of themselves do not create reality. It is the feeling, the emotional state, the consciousness that creates reality. You will always have passing thoughts, both positive and negative. The key is not to identify the negative thoughts, not to dwell in them, not to make them your home. Instead, choose deliberately the state you wish to occupy and persist in it despite any contrary thoughts or appearances. This brings me to another important principle, the principle of attention. Whatever you focus your attention on, you energize and manifest in your life. Your attention is like a spotlight. Whatever it illuminates becomes your reality. Therefore, be selective with your attention. Direct it consciously toward what you want, not toward what you do not want. If you want health, do not give your attention to illness. If you want wealth, do not give your attention to poverty. If you want harmonious relationships, do not give your attention to conflict. This is asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. I once worked a businessman who was facing financial ruin. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy and all external evidence pointed to an inevitable collapse. I taught him the principle of attention. I told him, do not give life to the bankruptcy by dwelling on it, by talking about it, by feeling the despair of it. Instead, direct your attention to the state of financial prosperity. I instructed him to create a mental scene that implied the financial turnaround of his company. In his imagination, he crafted a scene where his accountant was showing him balance sheets indicating substantial profits. He felt the relief, the joy, the gratitude of this turnaround. He persisted in this mental exercise for several weeks. During this time, an opportunity presented itself that he would have missed had he been focused on bankruptcy. This opportunity led to a partnership that not only saved his company but propelled it to new heights of success. This is the law in operation. By directing his attention to the desired state, by dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he asked in such a way that the universe could not say no. I want to underscore that this principle is not about ignoring reality or living in denial. It is about understanding the true nature of reality. The external world is a shadow reflection of internal states. By changing your internal state, you inevitably change the external reflection. Think of it this way. If you are looking at your reflection in a mirror and you do not like what you see, it would be futile to try to change the reflection directly. You must change what is being reflected yourself. Similarly, if you do not like what you see in your world, you must change your concept of yourself, your state of consciousness. This brings me to another crucial aspect of asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. Self-concept. Your self-concept, your idea of who you are, is the foundation of all your manifestations. Everything you experience is a reflection of your concept of yourself. If you see yourself as unworthy, you will manifest experiences that confirm this unworthiness. If you see yourself as a victim, you will manifest experiences of victimization. If you see yourself as powerful, loved, and abundant, you will manifest experiences that confirm these qualities. Therefore, the most fundamental change you can make is to change your concept of yourself. Assume the feeling of being the person you want to be. Live from that assumption. This is asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. I recall a young actor who came to me discouraged by his lack of success in the film industry. Despite his talent and dedication, he had been unable to secure significant roles. When I inquired about his self-concept, he revealed that he saw himself as a struggling actor, always on the periphery of success. I told him, that is your problem. You are assuming the state of struggle, and the universe is faithfully reflecting back to you that state. You must change your concept of yourself. You must see yourself as a successful actor in demand for major roles. I guided him in constructing a scene that implied his success in the industry. In his imagination, he would read reviews praising his performance in a major film. He would feel the satisfaction, the pride, the fulfillment of being recognized for his talent. He persisted in this new self-concept for several months. And then, as if by magic, though it was not magic but law, he was called to audition for a significant role in a major production. He secured the role, and his performance was indeed praised by critics, just as he had imagined. This is the law. By changing his concept of himself, he changed his reality. He asked in such a way that the universe could not say no. Now, I want to address a question that often arises. What about collective events or global conditions? Can my individual consciousness affect these? The answer is yes, but with a caveat. Your experience of the collective is still your individual experience. You can only experience what matches your state of consciousness. For instance, in times of economic downturn, Some people experience hardship and lack, while others experience opportunity and abundance. Same external condition, different individual experiences because of different states of consciousness. Therefore, do not be concerned with changing the world. Be concerned with changing yourself, your concept of yourself. As you do this, your experience of the world will change. And as more individuals do this, the collective experience changes as well. I want to emphasize that this principle is not selfish or self-centered in a negative sense. It is simply a recognition of the law of consciousness. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot project what you do not possess within yourself. By focusing on your own state of consciousness, you are actually serving others in the highest way possible by becoming an embodiment of what you wish to see in the world. Let me share with you one final example to illustrate the power of this principle. A woman I knew desired to help the homeless in her community. She volunteered at shelters, donated money and resources, advocated for policy changes, all external actions, coming from a place of compassion, but also from a consciousness of otherness, of separation. Despite her efforts, she felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem and frustrated by the seeming lack of progress. I suggested a different approach. Instead of seeing the homeless as separate from herself, as others to be helped, I advised her to assume the state of consciousness where homelessness was already saw. In her imagination, she created scenes where the once homeless individuals in her community were now living in comfortable homes, engaged in meaningful work, integrated into society. She felt the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of this fulfilled state. As she persisted in this new state of consciousness, something remarkable began to happen. She found herself inspired with new ideas and approaches. She connected with individuals and organizations that shared her vision. Resources that were previously unavailable suddenly materialized. Within a year, her community had implemented innovative solutions that significantly reduced homelessness. Was this a coincidence? No. It was the law in operation. By assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, by asking from the state of fulfillment rather than from the state of lack or problem, she asked in such a way that the universe could not say no. In conclusion, I want to remind you of the core principle we've explored tonight. The universe cannot say no to you when you ask from the state of fulfillment. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, this is the art and the science of effective prayer. Remember, your consciousness is the only reality. What you assume, you become. What you believe, you receive. What you embody, you manifest. The external world is a shadow, a reflection of internal states. Therefore, choose wisely the state you wish to occupy. Dwell in it, live from it. Fall asleep in it, and watch as the universe rearranges itself to reflect back to you your new concept of yourself. The power is within you. It has always been within you. It is your own wonderful human imagination which is God in action. Use it deliberately. Use it lovingly. Use it wisely. When you know how to properly from the state of fulfillment rather than from the state of lack, there is no power in heaven or on earth that can say no to your request. For in truth, you are not requesting anything. You are claiming what is already yours by divine right. Go forth now with this knowledge. Apply it in your daily life. Test it. Prove it to yourself and experience the freedom, the joy, the abundance that is your birthright. Remember always, you are the operant power in your world. You are the author of your life story. You are the God of your universe. Ask from that place of power, from that place of knowing, and the universe cannot, indeed, it will not say no. I thank you for your attention tonight. Blessings upon each and every one of you. May you go forth and create deliberately, consciously, and joyfully. I have shared with you tonight the principle that transcends all religious dogmas, all philosophical systems, all cultural traditions. It is the principle of consciousness, the principle of imagination, the principle of assumption. It is the principle that Jesus taught when he said, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours." This principle has been taught by the great spiritual teachers throughout history, though often veiled in symbolism and allegory. Tonight, I have attempted to unveil it, to present it in its naked simplicity, so that you may apply it directly in your life. The great secret is this: the world is yourself pushed out. Everything that you experience is a reflection of your own consciousness. Change your consciousness, and then you change your world. This is asking in such a way that the universe cannot say no. As you leave here tonight, I encourage you to begin immediately to apply this principle. Choose a desire, something that you truly want to be, to have, or to experience. Construct a scene in your imagination that implies the fulfillment of this desire. Enter into the scene. Make it as vivid and as real as possible. Feel the emotions that would be yours if your desire were already fulfilled. Then each night as you go to sleep, replay this scene in your imagination. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Do this faithfully, persistently, and you will be amazed at how quickly your external reality begins to rearrange itself to match your internal assumption. Remember, the universe responds not to your words, not to your thoughts, but to your state of consciousness, to your feeling state. When you feel that something is real, when you embody the state of its reality, the universe has no choice but to reflect back to you that reality. This is the true meaning of faith. Faith is not belief in the unknown. Faith is the feeling of the known. Faith is the feeling of possession of that which is not yet visible to the senses. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When you operate from faith, when you live from the end, when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are asking in such a way that the universe say no. I leave you with this final thought. You are divine. You are God in human form. The power that created and sustains the universe resides within you as your own wonderful human imagination. Use this power consciously. Use it lovingly. And there is nothing that you cannot be, do, or have. Go forth now and create the life of your dreams, for indeed it is your divine right and your divine responsibility to do so. Thank you, and God bless you. The cycle I am going to reveal to you tonight is the very rhythm of creation itself. When repeated with understanding and persistence, it will cause reality as you know it to collapse and reshape itself in harmony with your desires. This is not magic, it is law. Consider for a moment, what is it you truly desire? Is it wealth? Is it love? Is it perfect health? Whatever it may be, I tell you with absolute certainty that it already exists in what I call the fourth dimensional world, the world. Your task is not to create it, but to appropriate it through this specific cycle of consciousness. This cycle consists of 4 distinct stages, which when repeated, especially with the int and persistence of 100 repetitions, as you've asked to understand, will invariably externalize your desire in your 3-dimensional world. Let me elaborate on each stage. The first stage is clarity. You must define with crystal clarity what it is you wish to experience. Vague longings produce vague results. When I say clarity, I mean you must know precisely what you desire in its complete detail. If it is wealth you seek, what exact sum? If it is a relationship, with what qualities? If it is a position, with what specific attributes? Many fail at this first critical step because they say, I want more money or I want better health, without defining the exact state they wish to occupy. Remember, precision in your desire creates precision in its fulfillment. Take a moment now and define your desire with absolute clarity. See it, feel it, know it in its completed form. The second stage is assumption. This is perhaps the most transformative stage of all. Having clarified your desire, you must now assume the feeling of its fulfillment. This is not pretending. This is entering psychologically into the state of consciousness where your desire is already fulfilled. Wayne tells you this. If you desire to be wealthy, how would you feel if you were already wealthy? If you desire perfect health, how would you feel if you were in perfect health? That feeling state is what you must capture and assume as true right now. The secret is to occupy the state in consciousness before it is visible to your mortal eye. You must dare to commit yourself completely to this new concept of yourself. You must be willing to die to your present concept of self and be born to your desire concept. This psychological death and rebirth is the essence of true transformation. When I speak of assumption, I am speaking of a definite psychological technique. You must mentally construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Enter that scene. Make it as real as this room is real. Touch the objects in your imagined scene. Listen to the conversations. Smell the aromas. Feel the emotions that would be yours if your desire were now fulfilled. But never, you might say, This is merely daydreaming. No, my dear friends, this is not idle fantasy. This is the creative use of imagination, which is God in action within you. For imagination is not something apart from you. It is your very self and the eternal underlying reality of all things. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are actually experiencing what I call a controlled waking dream. This controlled waking dream, when persisted in, will harden into fact that is law, and nothing can prevent it. The third stage of this transformative cycle is persistence. Having assumed the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you must persist in this new state regardless of appearances. The world may continue to show you evidence of your old state. Your senses may deny the reality of your assumption. Circumstances may seem to contradict your new concept of self. This is the point where most people falter. But I tell you this, the evidence of your senses is only the shadow of past assumptions. Your present environment, your present circumstances, your present bank balance, your present relationships, these are all but reflections of states previously occupied in consciousness. They have no power to persist when you withdraw your attention from them. Persistence does not mean effort or struggle. It means fidelity to your new concept of self. It means remaining faithful to the feeling of your wish fulfilled, regardless of appearances. This requires a peculiar form of detachment indifference to the evidence of your senses while maintaining an unwavering confidence in the reality of your assumption. When doubt or fear arises, and they will arise, return at once to your clarified desire and your assumption of its fulfillment. Do not fight the doubt or fear, for what you resist persists. Simply redirect your attention to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This is true persistence. The fourth and final stage of this cycle is release. Having clarified your desire, assumed the feeling of its fulfillment, and persisted in this assumption, you must now release it completely. By release, I do not mean abandonment of your desire. I mean release of anxiety, release of doubt, release of the when and how your desire will manifest. This release is actually the Sabbath of your creative cycle. It is that point where you rest in the absolute confidence that what you have planted in consciousness must inevitably come to flower in your experience. It is living in the calm assurance that what you have assumed as true in consciousness is now being crystallized in the material world through a series of events you could not possibly devise. Release means you no longer mentally check to see if your desire is coming. You no longer anxiously look for signs of its manifestation. You no longer discuss it with others seeking validation. You have planted the seed, and now you allow the divine process to bring it to harvest in its own perfect timing. These four stages, clarity, assumption, persistence, and release, constitute the complete cycle, which when repeated, especially 100 times, as you've suggested, will inevitably cause reality to collapse and reshape itself according to your conscious assumption. Now, why 100 repetitions? There is something profound about persistence to this degree. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, you reach a threshold of consciousness. You saturate your entire being with your new concept of self until it becomes your predominant state. Consider the biblical story of the persistent widow who, through her continuous asking, finally received what she sought. Or recall the story of Elijah, who sent his servant 7 times to look for evidence of rain before the drought was broken. These are symbolic representations of the principle I am sharing with you tonight. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, several transformative processes occur simultaneously. First, you wear away all contrary beliefs through sheer persistence. Second, you build tremendous momentum in consciousness. Third, you reach a point where your new state feels more natural than your old state. And fourth, you establish such a deep conviction that the outer world has no choice but to conform to your inner assumption. Let me share with you a personal experience to illustrate this principle. Many years ago, I desired to come to America from Barbados. I had no obvious means of doing so, no money for passage, no connections in America, but I clarified exactly what I desired to lecture on this principle in America. I assumed the feeling of standing before audiences sharing this truth. I persisted in this assumption regardless of the seeming impossibility of my desire, and I released all anxiety about how this would come to pass. I did not do this cycle once or twice. I lived in this assumption constantly, and though it seemed impossible, a series of events occurred that no one could have anticipated bringing me to America exactly as I envisioned. This was not coincidence. This was law in operation. When you repeat this cycle with intensity and conviction, especially 100 times, you create what I call a psychological climate, the manifestation of your desire not only possible but inevitable. You reach a point where doubt cannot survive in your consciousness, where fear finds no foothold, where your new concept of self becomes so real that nothing can dislodge it. Now let me address a question that may arise in your mind. Must I literally repeat this cycle 100 times in succession? The number 100 represents completeness, thorahas, absolute conviction. You might perform this cycle formally once in the morning and once in the evening, but carry the feeling throughout your day. Or you might devote an entire day to cycling through these stages repeatedly until your whole being is saturated with the reality of your assumption. The exact method is not as important as the intensity and sincerity with which you perform each repetition. One repetition performed with complete absorption and emotional intensity is worth more than 50 repetitions done mechanically without feeling. Another question you might have is, how long will it take for my desire to manifest? This varies according to several factors. The intensity of your desire, the clarity of your assumption, your fidelity to the new state, and what I call the distance between your present concept of self and your desired concept. Some desires manifest instantly, some within days or weeks, others may take months. But remember this, time is the illusion of consciousness. In the realm of true causation, the fourth dimensional world of consciousness you desire is already fulfilled the moment you assume it to be so. Its appearance in the three-dimensional world is only the shadow following the substance. Let me now give you a practical method for applying this cycle. Begin tonight as you prepare for sleep. Sleep is the most receptive state of consciousness when the subjective mind is most open to impression. First, clarify exactly what you desire. See it in your mind's eye with perfect clarity. Second, construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Perhaps it is a friend congratulating you, or perhaps it is simply you experiencing the joy of your fulfilled desire. Third, enter this scene completely. Feel its reality. Feel the naturalness of it being so. Feel the gratitude that would be yours if this were now true. And fourth, fall asleep in this assumption, releasing all anxiety about results. As you drift into sleep while feeding the reality of your fulfilled desire, you are engaging in what I call the law of identical harvest. Just as in nature, a seed always produces after its kind, a state of consciousness always materializes after its kind. Plant the seed of your desire in the fertile soil of sleep. Water it with the feeling of reality, and it must produce after its kind. Repeat this process each night without fail. During your waking hours, whenever doubt or contrary evidence appears, gently return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Do not fight the current circumstances. Simply be faithful to your new assumption. As you persist in this practice, you will notice subtle changes beginning to occur. Perhaps someone will make a remark that aligns with your desire. Perhaps a small opportunity will present itself. These are what I call the first fruits of your assumption. They are signs that the seed you have planted is beginning to germinate. Do not be discouraged if the complete manifestation does not appear immediately. Remember, in nature there is a gestation period for all seeds. Your psychological seed follows the same law. The invisibility of the process does not indicate its absence. The oak is in the acorn, though invisible to the physical eye. Now let me tell you why this process works with such mathematical precision. The outer world is nothing more than a projection of your states of consciousness. When you truly grasp this, you will understand that there is nothing to change but yourself. Change your concept of self and you change your world. This is the true meaning of the biblical statement. DA, transformed by the renewing of your mind. Your mind is not something you possess. It is what you are. When you renew your mind through this cycle of consciousness, you are literally being born anew, and your world must transform accordingly. Reality is infinitely plastic, awaiting the impress of your assumption. It has no existence independent of your consciousness of it. The furniture in this room appears solid and substantial, but modern physics has revealed that it is mostly empty space, patterns of energy awaiting interpretation by consciousness. So true is every circumstance and condition in your life. The cycle I have shared with you tonight is not positive thinking, not affirmation, not visualization in the ordinary sense. It is a fundamental law of consciousness that operates with or without your knowledge of it. What makes it powerful when consciously applied, is that you are no longer allowing states to be activated in you by default or by circumstance. You are consciously choosing the state from which you experience life. Consider carefully what I am telling you. If consciousness is the only reality and your assumptions determine which aspects of reality you experience, then mastering the cycle is equivalent to mastering life itself. When you repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are programming the very substance of reality. Each repetition strengthens your new self-concept. Each repetition weakens contrary beliefs. Each repetition builds momentum and consciousness. Each repetition moves you closer to the threshold where your assumption must externalize itself in your world. This is why persistence is so crucial. Many give up just before the threshold is reached. They practice for a while, see no immediate results, and abandon their assumption. But had they persisted just a little longer, just a few more repetitions of the cycle, they would have witnessed the collapse of the old reality and the emergence of the new. Think of consciousness as a stream that has been flowing in a particular direction, carving out a deep channel over time. Your habitual thinking, your chronic assumptions about yourself and life have created this channel. To redirect the stream requires persistent effort in the new direction until a new channel is formed. 100 repetitions of this cycle will carve such a channel. Now, I want to address another important aspect of this process, the emotional component. Feeling is the secret. Your assumption must be accompanied by feeling to be effective. Cold intellectual assumption has little power to transform, but assumption warmed by genuine feeling becomes alive and active. When I speak of feeling, I do not necessarily mean intense emotion. I mean the feeling of naturalness, the feeling of this is so. It is the difference between saying I will be wealthy and feeling I am wealthy. It is the difference between affirming health and feeling the ease and vitality of perfect health. The feeling makes it real in consciousness. This principle is expressed in Scripture as whatever you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. Note carefully the present tense. Believe that you receive them now, not that you will receive them in the future. This psychological receiving in the present moment is the secret of effective prayer. I tell you a mystery. Time exists only in consciousness. Past, present, and future are merely arrangements of events in consciousness. When you assume your desire is fulfilled now, you are actually moving in consciousness to that point in time where your desire is already fulfilled. From that perspective, looking backward, the events that lead to its fulfillment are already completed. This is why release is such an important part of the cycle. When you truly feel your desire is fulfilled now in consciousness, anxiety about its manifestation becomes impossible. You cannot worry about receiving what you have already received. This state of consciousness, repeated 100 times with conviction, creates an unshakable certainty that reshapes reality around you. Let me explain further why repeating this cycle 100 times is so powerful. Consciousness has momentum. Your current life situation has momentum based on years of assumptions. To redirect this momentum requires counter-momentum of sufficient force. Each repetition of this creative cycle builds this counter-momentum. It is like turning a heavy flywheel. The first few turns require great effort and produce little movement. But as you persist, each turn becomes easier and the flywheel begins to move with increasing speed. Eventually, it turns with its own momentum and little additional effort is required. So it is with consciousness. The first few repetitions of this cycle may seem to produce little external result, but do not be deceived by appearances. Each repetition is building momentum in consciousness. Each repetition is turning the flywheel. Persist through 100 repetitions, and you will reach the point where your new assumption moves forward under Wayne Dyer and Banny pace in your outer world. Another benefit of 100 repetitions is the dissolution of doubt. Doubt is the only enemy of your desires, but doubt cannot maintain itself in the face of persistent assumption. When you repeat this cycle 100 times, you simply wear out all contrary beliefs through sheer persistence. Consider the biblical story of the walls of Jericho. The Israelites marched around the city 7 times, and on the 7th day the walls collapsed. This is a perfect metaphor for what happens when you repeat this cycle of consciousness. The walls of your current reality, built by past assumptions, cannot withstand the persistent march of your new assumption. They must collapse. But remember, the collapse of reality is not destruction, it is rearrangement. The same substance that formed your old reality now reshapes itself to conform to your new assumption. Nothing is lost or is transformed. Now let me address what may be your greatest challenge in applying this principle: the evidence of your senses. Your senses will continue for a time to show you evidence contrary to your assumption. This is where most people falter. They assume the feeling of their wish fulfilled today, but tomorrow, when circumstances appear unchanged, they abandon their assumption. This is a fundamental error. Your senses show you only the effects of past assumptions. They cannot show you your present assumption until it has had time to project itself outward as effect. This time lag between assumption and its visible manifestation is the testing point of faith. By faith, I do not mean blind belief. I mean fidelity to your assumption regardless of sensory evidence to the contrary. I mean the courage to remain loyal to your invisible assumption rather than to visible circumstances. This faith, maintained through 100 repetitions of the cycle, will inevitably transform the invisible into the visible. When you look at your current bank balance and it contradicts your assumption of wealth, you must choose which you will accept as reality: the visible bank balance or your invisible assumption. When your body shows symptoms that contradict your assumption of perfect health, you must choose where to place your faith: in the visible symptoms or in your invisible assumption. This choice, made consistently in favor of your assumption through 100 repetitions, is what causes reality to collapse and reshape itself according to your desire. The visible can persist only as long as you give it life through your attention and belief. Withdraw belief from appearances. Transfer it completely to your assumption, and appearances must change. There is another benefit to repeating this cycle 100 times. It creates what I call a new normal in consciousness. After 100 sincere repetitions, your new state begins to feel more natural than your old state. It becomes your default position, your resting place in consciousness. When this occurs, you no longer need to consciously maintain your assumption. It has become part of your self-concept, as natural and effortless as breathing. At this point, manifestation accelerates dramatically because there is no longer any conflict in consciousness. Let me share another personal experience. When I first desired to own my own home in Beverly Hills, it seemed impossible based on my financial circumstances at the time. But I clarified exactly what I desired: the type of home, the location, even the feeling of walking through its rooms. I assumed the feeling of owning this home. I persisted in this assumption despite appearances, and I released all anxiety about how it would come to pass. I repeated this cycle not once or twice, but continuously until the feeling of owning this home became my normal feeling state. I did not constantly affirm I will own a home or struggle to believe it. I simply lived from the assumption that I already owned it. Within a remarkably short time, a series of unexpected events occurred, bringing me the exact home I had imagined in the exact location in a way no one could have planned or predicted. This was not chance or good fortune. This was law in operation. The principle I am sharing with you tonight has been taught in various forms throughout history. In Scripture, it is written, "All things whatsoever you ask in prayer, believing you shall receive." In more modern terms, we might say consciousness is the only reality, and what you assume as true in consciousness must externalize itself in your world. This principle is not dependent on any particular religion or belief system. It is as practical and demonstrable as any law of physics. Just as gravity operates, whether you believe in it or not, this law of consciousness operates with or without your recognition of it. The difference is that while you cannot consciously control gravity, you can consciously control your assumptions. And in doing so, you control the very substance of your experience. This is the true meaning of dominion. Not dominion over others, but dominion over your own consciousness, which is dominion over your life. When you repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are exercising this dominion, its highest form. You are consciously choosing the state from which you will experience life rather than accepting whatever state is activated in state. Now let me address what may be another concern. Can I use this principle to help others? Yes, but with an important qualification. You cannot violate another's free will through this principle. You can, however, assume that they are as you desire them to be. If you have a loved one who is ill, do not focus on changing their illness. Instead, assume they are well. Feel the joy and gratitude you would feel if they were already perfectly healthy. See them in your mind's eye, full of vitality. Hear their voice, strong and clear. Feel their hand warm and firm in yours. By assuming this state for them, you are not manipulating them. You are creating an opportunity in consciousness for them to step into this state if they choose. Your assumption becomes an invasion, not a compulsion. The same applies to relationships, to business dealings, to any interaction with others. Assume they are as you would have them be, not to control them, but to create a state in consciousness to which they can rise if they are willing. Another question that may arise is, what if I have multiple desires? Should I apply this cycle to all of them simultaneously? This is a matter of focus and intensity. I recommend focusing on one primary desire until it manifests, especially when first practicing this principle. Once you have experienced success with one desire, your faith in the principle will be strengthened, making it easier to apply to other desires. Eventually, you will reach a point where you can maintain multiple assumptions simultaneously, but begin with one clear desire. Now, let me share with you a deeper understanding of why reality collapses in your favor when you master this cycle. Reality as you perceive it is not fixed or solid. It is fluid, responsive, and fundamentally mental in nature. What appears solid and unchangeable is actually a pattern of energy held in place by habitual consciousness. When you introduce a new pattern in consciousness through persistent assumption, you create what physicists might call constructive interference with the old pattern. As this new pattern strengthens through repetition, it eventually cancels out the old pattern and establishes itself as the dominant reality. This is not metaphysical speculation. It aligns perfectly with our modern understanding of quantum physics. At the quantum level, particles exist in multiple potential states until observed. The act of observation collapses these potentials into a single experience. Your consciousness through assumption is performing this collapse, selecting from infinite potentials the experience that matches your state. The 100 repetitions ensure that your collapse of reality is not random or temporary, but consistent and permanent. Each repetition strengthens the signal, clarifies the pattern until reality has no choice but to conform. Another way of understanding this process is through the concept of resonance. Every state of consciousness has a unique frequency or vibration. Your current life experience resonates with your habitual state of consciousness. When you change your state through assumption, you change your frequency. At first, this new frequency may be weak compared to your habitual frequency, but as you repeat the cycle, the new frequency strengthens. After 100 sincere repetitions, it becomes dominant. At this point, circumstances, events, people, and conditions that resonate with this new frequency are drawn into your experience, while those that do not resonate fall away. This is the true meaning of the biblical statement, "To him who has more will be given, from him who has not. Even what he has will be taken away." It refers not to material possessions, but to states of consciousness. When you establish a state firmly in consciousness through repetition, more of its kind must be given to you. It is law. Now let me give you some practical guidance on how to structure your 100 repetitions for maximum effectiveness. You might begin with 21 consecutive days of morning and evening practice. Each morning upon waking and each evening before sleep, go through the complete cycle of clarity, assumption, persistence, release. The morning session programs your consciousness for the day. The evening session impresses your subconscious just before sleep when it is most receptive. After 21 days of this practice, 42 repetitions, you will notice significant shifts in your consciousness and likely in your outer world as well. Continue for another 29 days, bringing your total to 50 days or 100 sessions. By this point, your assumption will have gained tremendous momentum. Many desires would have already manifested, and those that haven't will show unmistakable signs of movement toward manifestation. During this period, it is crucial that you protect your assumption from doubt and contradiction. Be selective about what you read, what you watch, and especially what conversations you engage in. Do not discuss your desire with those who might question or ridicule it. Keep your assumptions sacred and private until it manifests. Also, throughout your day, whenever your mind is not actively engaged in necessary tasks, return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Make it your mental home, your resting place. This continuous return, even if brief, reinforces your formal practice and accelerates manifestation. Let me address one more important aspect of this process: detachment. By detachment, I do not mean indifference to your desire. I mean detachment from anxiety about its fulfillment. detachment from the need for specific methods of fulfillment. True detachment comes from absolute confidence in the law. When you know with certainty that what you have assumed in consciousness must externalize itself in your world, anxiety becomes impossible. You rest in the assurance that your desire is already yours, and the only place where creation occurs, consciousness. This detachment actually accelerates manifestation because it removes resistance. Anxiety, worry, and constant checking for results are forms of resistance that delay manifestation. They imply that you do not yet have what you are assuming to have. This contradiction in consciousness creates confusion in the creative process. When you truly grasp that having the feeling of your wish fulfilled is actually having the wish itself in the one place where all creation begins, you will understand why release is so important. You release not because you're giving up on your desire, but because in consciousness you already possess it. As you cycle through these stages 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, you are actually performing a profound act of creation. You are participating consciously in the very process through which all of reality comes into being. You are exercising your divine prerogative as a creative being. This is not egotism or self-aggrandizement. This is recognition of your true nature. For the power of assumption is not a power given to you, it is what you are. You are divine imagination embodied, clothed in human form, to experience the fruits of your assumptions. When you assume a state, you are not pretending to be what you are not. You are selecting from infinite potential states, one to express and experience. This selection, repeated with conviction 100 times, becomes your dominant state and therefore your dominant experience. The world around you, the circumstances of your life, the events you encounter, these are all shadows, reflections of your state of consciousness. Change the state. Repeat the new state 100 times with conviction, and the shadows must change accordingly. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight throughout history. It is the pearl of great price, the treasure hidden in a field, the kingdom within. It is the knowledge that your consciousness is the sole creative power in your experience, and that by controlled imagination, by assumption persisted in you, can transform your entire world. As you apply this cycle, especially through 100 repetitions, you will discover that the universe is infinitely more responsive to consciousness than you had previously recognized. Doors will open that seem permanently closed. Resources will appear that seem non-existent. People will enter your life who perfectly align with your new state. Circumstances will arrange themselves to support your assumption in ways no human planning could devise. This is not coincidence or good fortune. This is law in operation. Just as water must flow downhill, reality must conform to your persistent assumption. After 100 sincere repetitions of this cycle, you establish such a clear and powerful pattern in consciousness that reality has no choice but to rearrange itself accordingly. Remember clarity in your desire, complete assumption of its fulfillment, unwavering persistence regardless of appearances, and perfect release of anxiety about its manifestation. This cycle repeated with sincerity and emotional intensity, especially 100 times, will inevitably cause reality to collapse and reshape itself in perfect harmony with your assumption. Tonight, as you return to your homes, begin this practice. Do not delay. Do not wait for circumstance to change. Do not wait until you feel more worthy or more prepared. Begin now, for now is the only time there is. The present moment is the only point of power. Define with perfect clarity what you desire. Assume completely the feeling of its fulfillment. Persist in this assumption regardless of appearances. Release all anxiety about its manifestation and repeat this cycle faithfully until your consciousness is so saturated with the feeling of your fulfilled desire that it becomes your permanent dwelling place. Do this, my dear friends, and I promise you, by the law that cannot be broken, your world must conform to your assumption. Reality must collapse and reshape itself to match the pattern you have established in consciousness. This is not hope or speculation. This is law as certain as gravity, as reliable as the rising of the sun. You are not a helpless observer of life. You are his creator through the power of conscious assumption. Exercise this power deliberately, persistently, especially through 100 repetitions of this creative cycle, and watch in wonder as reality reshapes itself in perfect harmony with your desire. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The law is yours to command. Begin tonight and step into the life you have imagined. For imagination, persistently exercised through this cycle, especially 100 times, must become reality. That is the promise. That is the law. That is your divine inheritance. Remember, all things are possible to him who believes. Believe by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Repeat this cycle 100 times with sincerity and emotional intensity, and watch as the entire universe conspires to make your assumption your living reality. Consciousness is the one and only reality. Everything else, every circumstance, every condition, every event in your life is but a shadow, a reflection of your states of consciousness. Change the state by persistent assumption, and the reflection must change. This is the simple yet profound truth I leave with you tonight. Apply it faithfully through 100 repetitions of this creative, for your sake, your spit power. For when consciousness leads, all of reality must follow.